The first lie my mother ever taught me was this: love is something you earn, not something freely given, not something safe, not something that stays when you disappoint people, something you work for, something you perform for, something that can disappear the moment you stop being useful. I learned that lesson before I learned long division. I learned it standing on a wooden chair in our cramped Tennessee kitchen while my mother stirred gravy with one hand and pointed at dirty dishes with the other. "You're the oldest, Donna," she would say. "You help because you care about this family." And I did care. God, I cared so much. I cared when my little sister cried at midnight and my mother pushed open my bedroom door instead of getting up herself. I cared when my grandmother needed rides to dialysis and my father suddenly found overtime shifts more important. I cared when Thanksgiving dinners became my responsibility at 14 years old because you're just so much better at organizing things. I cared when my own birthday cakes came from grocery store clearance racks because Tessa needed braces. When my college textbooks were too expensive right now. When my dreams became negotiable, but everyone else's somehow remained sacred. I cared so much that I built my entire personality around being needed. And people who grow up that way rarely notice when they stop being daughters. They become employees with emotional obligations. That was my life for 32 years. Until 6 days before my wedding, when I discovered my mother had accepted $40,000 from another family to stop me from marrying the man I loved. Not metaphorically. Not emotionally. Literally. $40,000. A transaction. A negotiation. A price tag attached to my future. And the worst part? She genuinely believed she was doing the right thing. My name is Donna Ainsworth. I'm 32 years old. And this is the story of the day my mother tried to auction off my wedding in front of 200 people. And accidentally gave me my freedom instead. I grew up 11 miles outside Knoxville, Tennessee, in a split-level house that always smelled faintly like coffee, bleach, and whatever casserole my mother was stress cooking that week. The house wasn't ugly. Just tired. The wallpaper peeled in the upstairs hallway. The bathroom sink groaned every time someone turned the faucet. And the rusted swing set in the backyard leaned slightly left like it had given up years before the rest of us did. My father, Richard Ainsworth, worked for the Postal Service for 31 years. Rain or snow or Tennessee humidity so thick it felt drinkable, my father delivered mail. He woke up at 5:15 every morning. He ironed his own uniforms. He drank black coffee and read the Knoxville News-Sentinel in complete silence. My father wasn't cruel. That almost made it worse. Cruel people are easier to identify. You can protect yourself from cruelty. But passive people? People who watch damage happen and call it peacekeeping? They leave bruises nobody sees. Whenever conflict started brewing in our house, my father had one solution. Listen to your mother. That was it. Not, what's fair? Not, how do you feel? Not, maybe Janet's wrong. Just, listen to your mother. And my mother? Janet Ainsworth ruled our household the way some women run church committees and small-town governments. Everything moved through her. Schedules. Money. Holidays. Emotions. Narratives. Especially narratives. My mother could rewrite history faster than anyone I've ever known. If she hurt your feelings, suddenly you were too sensitive. If she crossed a boundary, she was just trying to help. If you objected long enough, eventually she cried. And once my mother cried, the conversation was over. Because then you became the villain. My younger sister, Tessa, learned this early. Tessa was beautiful in the effortless way certain women are. Big eyes. Glossy dark hair. Perfect teeth. The kind of face people forgave instantly. She also learned very young that charm was currency. By 15, she could get out of almost anything with a pout and a dramatic sigh. By 25, my mother was paying her rent, car insurance, and phone bill while proudly calling her independent. Meanwhile, I was working morning shifts at a cafe before college classes just to afford gas money. But whenever resentment threatened to surface, my mother would smile sadly and say, "You're stronger than Tessa," as if strength meant deserving less. And I accepted it. For years, I accepted it. I became dependable because dependable people receive praise in dysfunctional families. Not love. Not protection. Praise. You're such a good daughter. We can always count on you. What would we do without you? Those sentences sound warm until you realize they only appear when someone needs something. By 28, I had a paralegal degree, a full-time position at Brennan and Associates downtown, and a townhouse I bought entirely on my own. No family money. No inheritance. No rescue plan. Just overtime, discipline, and exhaustion. I handled custody disputes, protective orders, asset divisions. Every day at work, I watched people destroy each other over love, money, betrayal, and ego. I thought I understood family dysfunction professionally. Then I met Marcus Thompson. And suddenly I realized I had no idea what healthy love looked like. I met Marcus at a fundraiser for the Knoxville Area Urban League. I almost didn't go. I had worked a 10-hour day preparing exhibits for a custody hearing and wanted nothing more than sweatpants and microwave soup. But Rachel Kim, my best friend since college, dragged me there anyway. There will be free wine, she promised. There will be accountants, I countered. There will be attractive accountants. So I went. The ballroom buzzed with polite networking energy. Clinking glasses. Muted jazz. People pretending they weren't checking each other's name tags. And then there was Marcus. 6'1". Broad shoulders. Calm eyes. A charcoal gray suit that somehow looked both expensive and comfortable. But it wasn't his appearance that caught me. It was his stillness. Most men at events like that perform confidently and loudly. Marcus didn't. He listened more than he spoke. He looked directly at people when they talked. And when he asked questions, he waited for real answers. We ended up standing near the silent auction table talking for almost 40 minutes. Mostly about my job. Not because I dominated the conversation. Though I absolutely did. But because he genuinely listened. Do you know how intoxicating that is for someone who's spent her whole life being interrupted? To speak. And not feel like a burden? At one point, I stopped mid-sentence and laughed. I'm sorry, I said. I've been talking forever. Marcus smiled softly. I know. No sarcasm. No annoyance. No ego. Just warmth. By the end of the night, I gave him my number. By the end of the month, I knew my life was changing. The first time I brought Marcus home for Thanksgiving, my mother greeted him with a smile that looked painted on. He brought sunflowers for her. Wine for my father. Dessert from a bakery in downtown Knoxville. He called my father, sir. My mother accepted the flowers and said, "He seems nice." That was it. Not, "How did you two meet? What does he do? He makes you happy." Just, "He seems nice." I knew that tone. It was the same tone she used for neighbors she secretly disliked. Dinner was tense in tiny invisible ways. My mother corrected Marcus twice about Tennessee football statistics. Tessa kept making jokes about serious engineers. My father mostly watched the game in the den. After dinner, Marcus rolled up his sleeves and helped wash dishes without being asked. My mother pulled me aside into the hallway. "Are you sure about this?" she whispered. I frowned. About what? Him. The word landed heavily between us. "You could do better, Donna." There it was. Not explicit enough to confront. Not vague enough to ignore. My mother never said exactly what she meant. She implied. Suggested. Positioned. It gave her plausible deniability later. If accused, she could always say, "That's not what I meant at all." But I knew. She didn't like that Marcus came from a working-class background. She didn't like that his mother had raised him alone. She didn't like that he rented an apartment instead of owning property. She didn't like that he was quiet enough to resist her manipulation. Most of all, she didn't like that I loved him more than I needed her approval. That changed the power structure. And my mother noticed immediately. The years that followed became a slow war fought through politeness. Year 1. Marcus was mysteriously forgotten from Christmas invitations. Year 2. My mother introduced me to Derek Whitmore at a barbecue. "Wonderful young man," she said brightly. "Successful family." Derek was perfectly pleasant. Blonde. Polished. Safe. The human equivalent of a country club membership. Marcus stood 6 feet away, holding grilled corn, while my mother practically shoved Derek into conversation with me. I wanted to disappear. Later, in the car, I apologized to Marcus. He just shrugged gently. It's okay. But it wasn't okay. And we both knew it. Year 3. My mother stopped saying Marcus's name entirely. He became your friend. That engineer. Him. Tessa got worse, too. Every family gathering became an audition. I didn't realize Marcus was failing. He's kind of boring, she whispered once. Don't you want someone more ambitious? Marcus designed bridges. Tessa made skincare reels for 3,200 followers. But somehow, he was the underachiever. That's the thing about family narratives. Facts don't matter once roles are assigned. I was the responsible daughter. Tessa was the delicate one. My mother was the martyr. And Marcus? Marcus was the threat. Because people who truly love you make controlling families nervous. They teach you boundaries, perspective, self-worth. And once that happens, the old system starts collapsing. My mother could feel it happening. So she made a plan. A real one. With money involved. Marcus proposed a walking trail beside the Tennessee River. No crowd. No hidden photographer. No giant spectacle. Just sunset reflecting off the water and his hand shaking slightly as he opened a velvet box. I love the life we already have, he said quietly. I just want it forever. I said yes before he even finished asking. I cried all the way back to the car. Not because of the ring. Because for the first time in my life, choosing someone felt easy. No guilt. No performance. No obligation. Just certainty. Then I called my mother. Silence. 3 full seconds. Finally. Well, I hope you've thought this through. That was my engagement, congratulations. Tessa called an hour later. You're getting married before me? No congratulations either. Just offense. My father said. Congratulations, sweetheart. Then handed the phone back to my mother. That should have told me everything. But children of emotionally manipulative parents become experts at surviving on crumbs. One kind sentence feels enormous when you've spent years starving emotionally. So when my mother called 3 weeks later, offering $20,000 for the wedding, I almost cried. Because it felt like acceptance. Finally. Validation. Support. Love. Your father and I have been saving, she said warmly. I want to help. Help. That word should have terrified me. Instead, it healed something wounded inside me. I wanted my mother to love me so badly that I ignored every warning sign. Even Marcus noticed. Your mom's never offered you money before, he said carefully. Maybe she's changing, I insisted. Marcus didn't argue. That was his way. He never tried to control my relationships. Never demanded ultimatums. Never forced confrontations. He trusted me to see the truth eventually. I just wish truth hadn't arrived the way it did. 6 days before the wedding, Rachel came to my townhouse at 11 o'clock at night holding her phone like evidence from a crime scene. Rachel Kim does not dramatize things. That's important. Rachel is practical. Sharp. Emotionally intelligent in the terrifying way therapists probably are. So when she sat on my kitchen floor and said, "You need to read this right now," I listened. The screenshot came from a nail salon group chat. Carol Whitmore, Derek's mother, had accidentally sent a message to the wrong thread. The message read, "Is everything ready for Saturday? Derek is nervous. I told him that once the intervention works, Donna will come around. The $40,000 was worth every penny." I read it 3 times. 40,000. My stomach dropped so hard I thought I might faint. Rachel scrolled further. Another screenshot. My mother's reply. Don't worry. Once Richard reads the speech, Donna won't have a choice. She won't humiliate herself in front of 200 people. I remember staring at my kitchen tile while my entire nervous system shut down. Not metaphorically. Actually shut down. My hands went numb. My hearing is distorted. The room tilted. $40,000. My mother had accepted $40,000 from another family to sabotage my wedding and redirect me toward their son. Like I was in real estate. Livestock. A business merger. I didn't cry immediately. Shock comes first. Grief arrives after. Marcus got to my townhouse 14 minutes after I called. He found me sitting on the kitchen floor, clutching my phone. I handed him the screenshots. He read silently. Then he sat beside me. No speeches. No rage. No dramatic threats. Just presence. And somehow that made me cry harder. I cried until my throat burned. Until breathing hurt. Until I finally whispered, "What do we do?" Marcus looked at me calmly. "We get married." I stared at him. "That's it. That's it. Aren't you angry?" "Oh, I'm furious," he said quietly. "But I'm not giving your mother our future." That sentence changed something inside me. Because he was right. Canceling the wedding would still give her control. So instead, we made a plan. I'm a litigation paralegal. Evidence is my love language. By midnight, Rachel and I were building binders. Venmo records. Guest list comparisons. Screenshots. Timeline documentation. Carol Whitmore's transfers were publicly traceable. $25,000. Then $15,000. Memo. Wedding arrangement. Even typing those words now makes me nauseous. My mother had literally labeled the transaction. Wedding arrangement. Like I was furniture. We prepared everything chronologically. Clean. Professional. Undeniable. Marcus contacted Reverend Patricia Miles privately. There may be an interruption, he warned. Her response? The ceremony will continue. God bless that woman forever. For the next 3 days, I performed normally like an Olympic athlete. Cake tastings. Flower confirmations. Rehearsal dinner smiles. Meanwhile, my mother called constantly. Are you excited? Everything's going to be beautiful. I just want this day to be perfect. Perfect. The irony almost choked me. At the rehearsal dinner, she toasted Donna's future without saying Marcus's name once. Derek Whitmore attended. Sat near my mother. Avoided eye contact with Marcus. Even then, I could see something uncomfortable in him. Not cruelty. Weakness. There's a difference. Cruel people design destruction. Weak people participate because disappointing others scares them more than hurting strangers. Derek looked like a man drowning quietly. I almost pitied him. Almost. The morning of my wedding arrived gray and humid. I woke at sunrise. Couldn't eat. Couldn't breathe properly. Could barely think. The venue sat on the outskirts of Farragut. Stone walkways. White garden chairs. A pergola draped in soft fabric. Beautiful. And underneath all that beauty? A bomb waiting to explode. Rachel met me in the bridal suite, carrying the manila envelope. My evidence. 5 pages that could destroy my family publicly forever. Are you sure? She asked. I looked at myself in the mirror. White dress. Veil. Steady hands somehow. No, I admitted. But I'm done being afraid. At 9:15, my mother entered the bridal suite smiling. You look beautiful, honey. She hugged me tightly. And I remember thinking, how terrifying is it that people can hold you lovingly while planning to humiliate you? Before leaving, she handed me a white envelope. For Donna. A letter. I set it aside unopened. At 10:20, Reverend Patricia knocked gently. I've been briefed, she said calmly. The ceremony will proceed. Absolute legend. Then came the music. Canon in D drifting across the garden. 200 guests are turning toward me. And there, at the altar, my father stood holding a microphone. Not waiting to walk me down the aisle. Waiting to stop the wedding. My mother is beside him. Tessa is filming with her phone. Derek sitting in row 3. The trap fully assembled. I remember one strange detail vividly. The wind chimes. They kept swaying softly above the pergola. Tiny silver sounds against absolute emotional chaos. I reached Marcus. He took my hand. I'm here, he whispered. Then my mother said, before this goes any further. And the entire garden froze. What followed felt surreal. My father reading accusations written by my mother. Claims about Marcus's finances. His background. His instability. Every word sounded unnatural in my father's mouth. Because they weren't his words. They were hers. Then came the letter. My mother was standing before 200 people explaining why Marcus wasn't good enough. No family wealth. No property. No status. as if love were a stock portfolio. Then she pointed directly toward row 3. "We can still fix this, Donna. Derek is waiting." I'll never forget the sound that moved through that crowd. Not gasps exactly. More like collective disbelief. 200 people realized simultaneously that they had accidentally attended emotional warfare. I looked at Derek. He looked horrified. And suddenly I understood something important. This wasn't a romance to my mother. It was a strategy. Status. Security. Control. Marcus represented unpredictability. Independence. Distance from her influence. Derek represented access. So I asked for the microphone. And my father handed it over immediately. Relief flooded his face. Like he knew, deep down, he had crossed a line he could never uncross. I held the microphone. Held the envelope. And finally told the truth. "My mother is right about one thing," I said. "Marcus and I do keep our finances private." Silence. But since we're being public today, I laid everything out. Marcus's spotless financial history. His career. The evidence. Then the Venmo records. $25,000. $15,000. Wedding arrangement. The crowd shifted visibly. People whispering. Staring. Calculating. And then I said the sentence that shattered everything. My mother accepted $40,000 to arrange my marriage to another man. The garden erupted. Not loudly. Whispers. Shock. Disbelief. My mother's face changed instantly. Because manipulators survive through narrative control. And for the first time in her life, she lost it publicly. That's not what it sounds like. But it was exactly what it sounded like. My father asked her directly, "Did you take the money?" She couldn't answer. That silence said everything. I watched my father realize, in real time, that the woman he defended for 32 years had orchestrated something monstrous. And then came the moment I'll never forget. My father looked at Marcus. Then at the speech in his hands. Then at me. "I should have asked," he whispered. And he walked away. Not dramatically. Not angrily. Just broken. He sat alone in the last row of chairs while 200 people watched the wreckage of our family unfold. Then Derek stood. His mother tried stopping him. He ignored her. "This is done," he said quietly. And he left. That was the exact moment my mother realized she had lost. Not just the plan. Me. After that, something strange happened. The crowd turned. Not against me. Against her. Because most people understand instinctively when a boundary has been violated beyond repair. And my mother had crossed every imaginable line. So I asked one final question. "Can I get married now?" Nervous laughter. Then applause. Then a standing ovation. And Reverend Patricia, coolest woman alive, opened her ceremony book and calmly said, "Now, shall we begin?" So we did. Right there among the ashes. Marcus looked at me like I was still beautiful after all that devastation. Maybe even more beautiful. And suddenly I understood something profound. Real love does not disappear when things become ugly. It becomes clearer. We exchanged vows with swollen eyes and shaking hands. Mine were simple. "I choose you. Not because anyone approves. Not because it's easy. Because you've never once asked me to earn your love." Marcus's voice cracked during his vows. "You taught me that home can be peaceful." That almost destroyed me emotionally. Because nobody had ever described me as peaceful before. Useful? Yes. Strong? Constantly. Dependable? Endlessly. But peaceful? Never. We kissed while 200 people cried and applauded. And for one miraculous second, everything felt quiet. Then I picked up the microphone one last time. Because there was still one thing I needed my mother to hear. I looked directly at her. $40,000, I said softly. "That's what my life was worth to you." Her face crumpled. Not performatively this time. Actually crumpled. And then I told her the truth she never understood. "I would have loved you for free." The entire garden went silent. "All you had to do was be happy for me." That was it. That was the tragedy of our relationship. I never wanted perfection. Approval. Money. I wanted my mother to love me without conditions. And she couldn't do it. Because control had become more important to her than connection. That realization hurt more than the betrayal itself. Then Marcus took my hand. And together we walked away. Not dramatically. Not triumphantly. Just free. The reception felt surreal afterward. Fairy lights. Champagne. Music. 3 empty chairs at the family table. My mother. My father. My sister. Gone. No goodbye. No confrontation. Just absence. Oddly fitting. But the rest of the evening? Beautiful. Genuinely beautiful. Rachel caught the bouquet and screamed theatrically. Marcus's mother cried during the first dance. Hector Vega toasted us with enough emotional intelligence to make half the room cry again. People kept approaching quietly, touching my arm, whispering, "You handled that with grace." But grace wasn't what I felt. I felt exhausted, relieved, heartbroken, liberated, all simultaneously. Trauma is strange like that. Sometimes freedom arrives wearing grief's clothing. Later that night in the hotel room, I finally opened my mother's letter. Most of it was predictable. Sacrifice. Fear. Justification. But near the end, her honesty slipped through briefly. "I'm scared I'm losing you. I'm scared he'll take you away from us." And suddenly I saw the truth beneath all her manipulation. Fear. Not evil. Not hatred. Fear. Fear of losing control. Fear of aging. Fear of becoming unnecessary. Fear that my independence meant abandonment. But understanding someone's pain doesn't excuse what they do with it. That's an important distinction. My mother was hurting. And instead of communicating that vulnerability honestly, she weaponized it. That was the difference between us. I folded the letter carefully and placed it in the nightstand drawer. I didn't throw it away. Because despite everything, she was still my mother. And healing is rarely clean. I went no contact for 6 months. Changed my number. Blocked everyone. My mother tried everything. Letters. Messages through relatives. Unexpected visits. Marcus handled every attempt calmly. "She'll reach out when she's ready," he told her once through the front door. Then he closed it gently. Not cruelly. Just firmly. Tessa disappeared from social media after clips of the wedding intervention spread around local gossip pages. The internet can be vicious. Especially when people discover someone filmed their sister's emotional ambush for content. Part of me pitied her. Another part remembered every laugh at my expense. Healing became complicated. 3 months later, my father mailed me a letter. Only 2 sentences. "I'm sorry I didn't ask. I should have asked." I cried harder reading those words than I did during the wedding. Because accountability, real accountability, is so rare in families like mine. And my father, for the first time in his life, stopped hiding behind silence. I still haven't fully forgiven him. But I answered his phone call 6 months later. We talked about tomatoes, gutters, neighbor dogs. Not the wedding. Not my mother. But something honest existed there finally. Something small. Real. Today, Marcus and I still live in the townhouse. We renovated the guest room ourselves. Sometimes we joke about turning it into a nursery someday. Sometimes we sit quietly drinking coffee while he reviews bridge blueprints and I organize case files for work. Ordinary mornings. Do you know how miraculous ordinary peace feels after chaos? Nobody screaming. Nobody manipulating. Nobody is testing loyalty. Just safety. I got promoted to senior paralegal last fall. Hector told me, "You've spent your whole life surviving. You finally get to live now." I think about that often. Because survival and living are not the same thing. Survival is performing for love. Living is realizing you deserved love before the performance ever started. My mother still hasn't contacted me directly. Maybe shame finally caught up to her. Maybe anger did. Maybe she's still waiting for me to apologize. I don't know. And for the first time in my life, I'm okay not knowing. The door isn't locked. But it's no longer my responsibility to hold it open while someone burns the house down. That distinction matters. People ask whether I regret exposing my mother publicly. I don't. Not because humiliating her felt good. It didn't. It broke my heart. But silence would have broken me instead. And I spent 32 years sacrificing myself to protect everyone else's comfort. I was done. The truth is, the wedding didn't destroy my family. The truth revealed what was already broken. There's a difference. Families don't collapse because one person finally tells the truth. They collapse because too many people spent years lying. And maybe that's the real ending to this story. Not revenge. Not victory. Not punishment. Freedom. Freedom from constantly earning love. Freedom from emotional debt.